What's up, guys? It's Aniki. This is coming late because I've had a rather busy weekend, but also it's been taking me a while to really figure out how to wrap my head around a lot of what happened this chapter. Even though it's all stuff that we kind of talked about, we guessed, we speculated on, seeing the trajectory that it took kind of threw me in a positive way. I'm definitely rocking with what happened. It's just a matter of the fact that it happened. And so let me take it easy. Start off with the cover page. Everybody's at a cafe. Everybody's together. We get the return of Tall Might. Just a nice fun one. I was hoping for one with the League of Villains. I'm just gonna assume this is Shonen Jump being like, make sure you put the MC on there. That's how this works. Uh, that is just the thing that Japan is notorious for. But that's okay. Everybody has their preferences, whatever. Not hating. I'm just disappointed. Uh, and we get some explanation about something that happened last chapter, and that even one of my buddies, Glam, was kind of concerned about because he was like, Shigaraki should not have been able to tank an attack from Redestro, who was that strong, that powerful. I heard a lot of people kind of questioning the durability tactics. Well, that's answered. Turns out that what Redestro threw was in fact a corporeal object that could be touched, and therefore the reason why Shigaraki survived it is because he destroyed it. And I'm gonna say that this isn't a new thing for him technically, because earlier this arc, somebody shot a torpedo at him and he whoop, smashed it, crushed it to dust, no problems. But it's definitely this is so. I think this is like a bit of a higher level than we thought that his reflexes were on point to, and so essentially the reason why he barely took any damage, even though some of the air around him was still forceful, is because he destroyed what was gonna hit him. This actually, for me, this puts Shigaraki as potentially equal to Hawks in the sense that he might be able to just simply palm any feather that Hawks shoots at him now. He might have the hands for that. I'm not saying he does. I'm just saying if we saw him fight Hawks and all of a sudden we just saw a bunch of Hawks' feathers turn to dust, like Shiggy just, looking like the 2019 Ichigo Kurosaki blocking feathers. I don't know. I'm just saying that this is some interesting reflex feat here where he's just simply grabbing attacks launched at him that can, even after being destroyed, damage buildings. Is kind of nuts. But we see here now that he's completely the fog of his mentality is gone. He's back. He's focused. Even though we are getting more flashback within the context of the chapter, it's imperative that we understand that we're getting the flashback so that we understand what Shiggy is referencing, but that that's for us to know, not necessarily this is the moment that Shiggy's in. This is like a flashback cutaway for our specific viewing and enjoyment and understanding of the context of the situation. Uh, and we actually get some really good art, I'm not gonna lie. Every page of this had some absurd level of detail, sauce to it, where you could just really feel that Horikoshi's just in his bag. And I kind of think about the fact that one, Tenko is the name of the protagonist from the first manga that Horikoshi wrote, but also you have the fact that it's known that part of the reason why My Hero Academia is a high school setting is that Shonen Jump and even Hori wasn't so sure if they could market college age people to the more teen demographic of the magazine, and they wanted to make sure it was relatable enough, so they aged the story down a bit. And so in a way, what you're seeing with Shigaraki is a kind of a dark version of how he could have had some of Deku's first arcs go, where maybe Deku would have literally lost some of his fingers. We would have had a Deku with a missing hand as the protagonist because he blew his own hand off fighting someone. I think that's basically something we can take out of what's going on here with Shigaraki, where we know that he wanted to have a harder hitting story, with the fact that Shigaraki's technically a villain, though at this point you could argue that the story is headed by two factions, the League of Villains and the Hero Society, and that Deku and Shigaraki are essentially like protagonists and deuteragonists due to the fact that they're both the focal points of these uh, demographic villains and like alignment narrative points, where anything that is going to majorly impact the story goes through these checkpoints at some point in some way to intersect and overlap and can still contribute to the main characters or the main focal points of these factions narratives. Like Overhaul technically going down shouldn't have helped Shigaraki, but because he was able to align with them and pull up on him and take his not only the bullet erasure, the erasure bullet, but also the restoration bullet. Even though he doesn't know what that does yet, the doctor, I'm sure, will be able to figure out that that's what that is. He is a bioscientist after all, so that's where I expect this to go. The Redestro actually looking really clean though. Like his artwork, I'm loving it. I'm loving the design, the way this is manifesting, like the fact that he's still got his pointed features, really giving you that like goblin face when you like look down on page like I think it's like 7, page 5, and I like the fact that Redestro is challenging him and saying, you know, no future. Well, then that's not what we're about. But the thing is that when you start to see the way Shigaraki's quirk manifested itself, and you see the way that Shigaraki's living and the very nature of his quirk, Redestro himself said that people like their quirks reflect their character and who they are, and so they're more in line with what their behavior reflects their quirk, the more in line with themselves they actually are. And so from that perspective, Shigaraki, who's decided to simply destroy things as his quirk can only destroy, is actually more worthy of the Meta Liberation Army ideals, in the sense that he has completely dedicated himself to living freely and dedicated to his quirk's existence. This is what a liberated quirk-based existence is. It's Shigaraki destroying anything he feels like it with his bare hands, because that's what his quirk does. It's Toga loving whoever she wants to and falling in love with them and taking their blood however she feels fit to do it. That's what a fully quirk liberated society is like. And so therefore the League of Villains, if anything, what they call out is that the Meta Liberation Army did not need to be an army to be liberated. They didn't need to sit there and build an entire forest, make all these connections through satellites, get all this political powers. All they had to do was go out there and do the damn thing. If they was really about it, they could have walked the walk, but they decided to do legislation, whereas the League of Villains are truly people living in a quirk liberated way. The reality is, I don't think it's that the Meta Liberation Army didn't want the public, seeing them as more in line with their cause. It's that they didn't want to lose their own followers to the League of Villains, which is what's going to happen here when they see that Shigaraki's quirk is to destroy, and he's the one who truly embodies living by your quirk. This perfectly sets up the ideological clash that, even without realizing it, though he's not looking to build a future, he is, in fact, by tearing down all of society, creating the very ultimate quirk liberated survival of the fittest. Whoever has the best quirk and knowledge and adaptability will be the one who wins in the end. So we cut away back. Remember that the League of Villains now embody the Meta Liberation Army's ideals more than the Meta Liberation Army, by the sheer fact that they are not an army, but rather just a band of cohorts that just live their lives using their quirk how they want to, handling it however they want to, and just being people. They're the ultimate free people. Shigaraki is basically the Luffy minus actually helping people of My Hero Academia. He's just running around doing his own thing, and we just happen to be following a guy that lives in the country that he's running around messing stuff up in. So yeah, it's like, what if you lived in Dressrosa and Dofi wasn't nearly as big of a douche, but Luffy still showed up to overthrow him. So now you got this dude just running around folding whatever he wants, wherever he wants, whenever he wants. But the government isn't a complete bad guy yet. Not a complete bad guy. There's some shady stuff going on with the government. That I'm not gonna pretend. The My Hero Academia government is actually pretty sleaze with the way they use hawks, etc. But another time. So we get down to finding out what Kadota, or who's basically Big Coda, as actually I'm just calling him Big Coda because that's what he is. He's a Coda that grew up, never got over hating heroes because his parents died, and he's just mad about it. So we get him literally dragging little Tomura, little Tanko, little Tank, taking him outside and making him sit in like 90-degree weather, just in a corner outside by like the wall, so nobody outside can see that there's just a little child being forced to sit out in the heat. And the father's like, no, nobody apologized to him. It's his fault. How dare he like people that go out of their way to save and make other people's lives better and safer? A grown Coda, like a big Coda. It's really pathetic. And then like you see these grandparents, and I get it, right? Nobody is economically free within this household. Everybody is reliant upon the money that little big Coda brings in. But the reality is that this man is literally just shooting on this kid's dreams because he has his own personal hangups, and we know he has the money for a therapist. Like the house this man built, the house Shig's father built, it is basically a mansion. So there's like no reason why he couldn't, get his together, go to a therapist, like start working out his issues instead of sitting around slapping his child upside his head because he happens to want to be a good person. Like we literally see little Tanko like talking about how he wouldn't, like even with his allergies, was outside and decided, oh, these two kids are stuck all alone, and he decided to help out. Like he was trying to be a good kid. That's the thing, is that like by pushing his son away from being a hero, and like ultimately he did become something. He became the opposite of what his father hated. In essence, Shigaraki has still subconsciously been seeking his father's approval through his actions as a villain. Shigaraki's got like a dad complex, then he's got the fact that he's indoctrinated into these ideals by his second father, All For One. Also, he can take down the apprentice of his grandmother. Like everything about Shigaraki's family has been a negative, like familial influences has been a negative on his existence, and turned him away and made him become the complete opposite of everything he chased being as a child before these events occurred. And you see he's actually upset. He like cries. He doesn't. He thinks his dad hates him and he just wants to be a hero. But his dad isn't like being like, oh hey, since you haven't had a quirk yet, there's a chance you won't be able to be a hero. But also like your grandma was a hero and she put me up for adoption and she died. But like instead, he just decided to be all domineering and silent. And that's the thing about. And this is the thing that happens a lot, is that adults will decide that they know everything empirically. The end. It's something we all kind of suffer from. We discuss these things on Twitter. We decide not even about important things, the little stuff, like how close are Zoro and Sanji in power level? Can Zoro beat Luffy? No. But like we talk about those things, and like people will be like, empirically, this is it. Like I just did it. And at the end of the day, it's like sometimes you need to be able to like address that, hey, like we don't need to be this like empirical about it, because the reality is that you have to look at the fact that yes, your mom died, but you didn't. She did exactly what she needed to save you. And in addition to that, you have a child that wants to be that. So instead, how about you talk to him about the risk and the consequences associated and why it upsets you? And maybe, just maybe, a sympathetic kid will be like, look, I won't be a hero in real life, but maybe I'll just keep it to like playing. I don't want to die out here. Like 6-year-olds don't want to die, so that'll at least stem the dream of that. Like, but like also the dad needs to desensitize himself a bit to it. That's some trauma. Like, well, I guess it doesn't matter now, all things considered. But we finally get further context on the flashback where Lil Tank and Hana, who I've seen a lot of people going in on. Relax. There's an issue that when you live in these kinds of dynamics. Here, let's just say, look, when she showed Tanko the picture, she was definitely looking out for him. She was trying to make him happy. She genuinely does care about her brother. But here's the thing. When you're like 7 years old, because to me that's about as far as part as they look, like a 5 and 7. I don't think you're necessarily comfortable just getting your ass beat. Like from personal experience of being 7 and getting my ass beat, you never really adjust to being like, oh, I guess this time I'll take it. Like, the only time that'll happen is if the real consequence is way, 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 way worse. So if you have a way out, a lot of kids will take that, and that's just normal. People like to believe that children are a lot more innocent than they really are, or like they're a lot dumber than they really are. But the reality is that children do have like survival instincts. You know, those are kind of, and like lying is a tool of that. It's a way to like deflect, deceive, protect oneself. So you gotta realize that this is a little girl who was trying not to get slapped around like a potato by a 35-year-old man. So I'm just saying, take it easy on her. You know, they're all victims of abuse here. Um, and so you get Tanko like being happy about it, his rash spreading, his hand hurting, and then his dad pulls up on him, and his sister's crying, and then that's when everybody gets because he said he wanted to go in there. You know, like she's trying, like she might have already gotten hit a couple times. We don't know, and like everybody's just watching him do it, and you see Shigaraki saying, "Somebody, like one of y'all, like y'all grown, y'all really gonna let him just beat me up over a picture? Y'all gonna let him beat me up over a picture?" And the thing is, like, you gotta ask yourself, like, with this long wind up, with all this, like the way he's been so aggressive, why is it taking so long for them to even say anything outside of like the stress of economic imprisonment? Because it's clearly a single income household. Like that's just what it looks like to me. So to me, like the best thing they could have done was actually talk to him if they were going to constantly in private like try to make him feel better about it instead of also trying to shoot his dreams down. Um, and so we get the letter from that Nana wrote, which is kind of one of the things I like about this is that a lot of the fan base, myself included, have always been like curious about Nana, just wanted to know more about her. And so by having this random connection, we kind of get to see more about who she was as a person. Like we've seen the like kind but also like kind of teasing self that she has. But like here we see her just kind of being a mom, and it's kind of interesting that a character who we've yet to actually have a true flashback conversation with or anything like that has so much like characterizations. We can tell like what kind of a kind and like charming woman she was. We can see that she had a bombastic personality. We can tell that why part of why All Might is so eccentric himself is that he was emulating to a certain degree. Yes, he had his own eccentric goal to begin with, but you combine that eccentric goal with like the bombastedness that was Nana, and you're like, boom, like he's got to be this eccentric, he's got to be this wild, and so you kind of see where and like how kind she really is to at least write him this letter so that he'll always have it. And she's like, look, I'm sorry, I know that this isn't fair to you, but this is the best I can do for you. And Nana, like, obviously she felt actually horrible about it. And even when you like see the All Might chapter that came out around the time of the movie, that was like a little bonus that included the scene of her versus All for One, where he says thanks for playing, and like blows up what looks to be like almost an entire city to kill her. Um, she seemed genuinely like caring and like wanting Gran Torino to escape, and like that's just I Nana is just a fascinating character, and I really love her existence and the way Horikoshi is like making a point to incorporate her into the narrative because of the fact that he's not necessarily leaning on like All Might flashbacks or anecdotes all the time, but sometimes it's the context of other people's experiences and the way she actually fits into the lives of these people as an inspiration source or as a source of burden for them psychologically, even though again she handled everything as correctly as she possibly could. Kotaro just did not take it well. Uh, but the family finally stands up to him, and the sad part is that we get to the next page, and it's the final page of the chapter, and you see him crying, and he's like, I can't take it. And you see the dog's eyes open up, and you've got all this eerie, like just shadowing in the background, and you see the dog tense up, and you just know that Tenko Shimura origin ends on the dog starting to get dusted. And this means that Shigaraki's John Wick arc begins, except he's the one who's going to end up dusting his dog. And there's a good, I've seen some good talk in the community. I agree, there's a really high likely chance that this is going to be how he gets the scar on his eye, where the dog probably will like scratch his eye while he's crying, and then as it's dissolving, he's going to freak out and run away, and it's going to slowly decay and die. And then he's going to like end up grabbing Hana as she's freaking out, and then she's gonna die because he's probably gonna like run into the house screaming and crying, and then it's just gonna snowball from there. But I actually think he's going to kill his father deliberately, and he's going to just blame him for this, especially when you factor in that uh, if he hadn't put him outside and had him like so upset and ending up there cuddling the dog, then at least his quirk might have manifested in another way. And if he hadn't been so intolerant of heroes who are inherently a good influence on society, then this wouldn't be an issue at all. Just the amount of like the you got a kid with these ridiculous allergies causing him to tear his like face apart. His quirk is developing late, and at the end of the day, he just wants to play, and you won't give him one game that doesn't even cost you anything. That's the like the idea of because like stopping your kid from playing heroes is comparable to stopping your kid from playing tag. It's like, oh, I don't want you to play this very simple, safe game. Like, yeah, because the kids would know that they would get in trouble for trying to quirk use on each other, and that's why you only see like, for the most part, kids use it as a form of actual trying to hurt each other violence. Like I'm pretty sure Bakugo might have blown up those fourth graders a bit back when he was in first grade, but that's what you get for being a fourth grader jumping a first grader. But there's one of the things that when you look at the way Shigaraki smiled at the father hand, to me he seemed liberated, like freed. He was excited, and this chapter being Tenko Shimura origin, almost expect the next chapter to be Tomoya Shigaraki origin, specifically to indicate that we have introduced you to the child and the innocent person and the kid that grew into this villain. But now we're also going to show you this villain when he finally became that. Because the reality is, this is the origin of the hero Tenko, like the small child that just wanted to play games with other kids and make them feel better even though they didn't have friends. This is that child's origin, you know, that's like the hero. They're like little Tenko looking out for people. But next chapter, we're getting what he is today, a Tomoto Shigaraki who dusts people. And whether it's deliberate on all counts, he does see here that he hates everyone. And I especially think of anyone he would hate, it would be his father. But due to the fact that he had repressed these memories for so long, all he could remember was the fact that there was a rift between him and his father subconsciously, this leading to his obsession with the father hand, also noting that the hand that is placed upon his face and hides his identity is the same hand that slapped his face and pushed it down to hide and obscure him because of he wanted dreams hiding and pushing down who he was as a person. So the hand that obscures his identity from the public was the same one that rejected his identity and tried to hide his ideals away from the world. So the placement of the father hand in itself, highly symbolic. And I think there's a good chance we see that hand get dusted, because while him being a villain is still very much the manifestation of father issues and not getting past the fact that his dad rejected who he wanted to be, the fact that he was never aware of part of that, in addition to that, to the sculpting and molding of All for One, regardless, Shigaraki would have ended up in a problematic spot, more than likely, as a person. This is just a matter of the scale of which now he has been able to become this destructive force due to the fact that his father rejected who he was, and he ended up with a mutational quirk, and you know ended up meeting All For One, whether All For One was secretly the neighbor that turned him in or not. That's something that we can neither prove nor disprove, but I would not be surprised if we got the answer next chapter and he kind of comes up there, because the way Shigaraki looks at his hands as a child is that, like, when you look back on it, you could almost, like, you saw like a mix of guilt and fear, but maybe part of that vividness in his eyes was also like a manic satisfaction in having taken out some of those people. So I don't know. I think this it's really hard to tell just how far Shigaraki's gonna go, because we don't know how long the story is gonna be. But I mean, it's looking like he's gonna be a guy that's eventually able to show up and touch a city block and watch it fall apart. And that's like, if he gets to that level, we've got some seriously intense, high stakes. Don't touch anything. Stay mobile. Please don't touch the thing that I'm using to propel or fly myself. Some very high risk, low reward at this point, because he seems kind of physically durable attacks. So Shigaraki definitely being put into a position to, one, be a strong villain as a physical and rational combatant, but also as a character, as we are seeing just how much uh, hero society, his inability to access hero society, so the rejection of hero society is what ruined Tanko's childhood, but in the process of internalizing that trauma, he too has now rejected hero society as something that he can never fit within or would belong to. So, yeah, I think that this chapter is at least a 9 out of 10, and I'm trying to remember to do that more, but yeah, just even now I'm not sure I articulated everything I want to say the way I wanted to say it, but I just definitely wanted to make a point to get this video out there, and because the other thinking here is that because we're getting this two-part flashback, there's a lot of ideas you can have and speculate on, but objectively, a lot of them are going to be shot down next week, more than likely. And so it makes it even weirder to, like, am I opening my mouth too soon? Definitely. But am I doing it anyway? Yes. So, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the analysis. Hope you have an excellent weekend, or you had an excellent weekend. And just keep enjoying yourselves. Keep liking, subscribing, and sharing. Like, hey man, I appreciate you guys. Aniki out.